we're now officially a month into the semester, so I hope things are going well for everybody, and you're managing to stay safe and sane and find balance in your life. And I know that's difficult in these times, but as we all know, it is important. I appreciate everybody joining us for the briefing. I've got a few colleagues riding shotgun here to help us stay focused and accurate and online on time. Excuse me. Before we jump into the gut of the messages, I do want to start with some good news. There's always good news, thankfully, at Lehman. Once again, we are ranked highly in the U.S. News and World Report, including, as I said in the message went out to campus earlier this week, fourth among top performers for social mobility and 14th on the list for top public schools. I think it is easy to play too much into these rankings. On the other hand, it is important to be validated, and sometimes you get that through these rankings. So while we won't fetishize these rankings, we do like the fact that they reinforce the data and information that we have about ourselves. And frankly, as somebody who is regularly out there trying to get people to understand the excellence and the impact that we have at Lehman through our programs and our faculty and staff, having this third-party validation of what we do is also important when we talk to external communities, whether they be prospective students and their families or potential donors, certainly alums, but also elected officials, corporate partners, whoever is potentially a stakeholder and audience member for the messaging and the things that we do at Lehman. The other thing I'd like to point out, because I think this is just awesome, the Department of Education has awarded the Bronx Institute a 7-year, more than $12 million award to continue its work with Bronx schools and establish more partnerships with and through Lehman. In addition to that, we have other partners who have committed an additional $17 million. So we're at nearly $30 million over the next decade or so, slightly less than a decade, to continue the good work and outreach of the Bronx Institute. I think it is both a reinforcing message of the good work that we do, but also so critical for us to deliver with these kinds of resources on the promise we have. As you all know, probably better than I do, Lehman is such an anchor in the Bronx and so important to the work that the community would like to have done, both in cultural and social and economic development, and certainly in workforce and talent development. And investments like these clearly demonstrate the trust that people have in the ability of Lehman's faculty and staff to get things done, and a great boost to our efforts to constantly and consistently prove to the communities, show the communities, probably a better word, that we are here as an able and effective partner. So congratulations to Dr. Martinez and the folks over at the Bronx Institute. It's wonderfully good news. And finally, I just want to reinforce just the value of the CUNY Comeback Program. It's impacted so many students at Lehman and beyond. It certainly helps us balance our collections, but ultimately what it does is creates more and more pathways for our students and our prospective students, because obviously students at Hostos and Bronx Community College are also impacted by the CUNY Comeback Program. It gives them pathways to continue on their education, and that's why we're here. So I think a wonderful program and truly impactful. And we don't always get to say that we had money invested to make a broad and deep impact on the lives of our students, but CUNY Comeback certainly demonstrates that capacity. The other part of the briefing that I have is with respect to where we're at. As you all know, we're crossing through deadlines for student vaccination. Things are never a linear process, and so there's always complexities in what we do as a system. We continue to work with our students to at least if they're not going to be vaccinated and able to get on campus this semester, to at least consider and move towards vaccination so that they're prepared to come back to greater degrees of normalcy in the spring semester. Um, we have complexities because, of course, as a system, we want to enforce certain guidelines, and at the same time, we want to engage and salvage the educational pathways of our students as much as we can. And so we will continue to work with students who are making progress towards vaccination, with the hope that in the next few weeks that all the students who can be fully vaccinated are not only fully vaccinated, but they have recorded and uploaded their information through the appropriate systems, so that we can clear them to come back to campus. Um, we had expected that this process would be done by October 7th. There are inevitably going to be some stragglers that get caught in the interstitial spaces between policies and guidelines that may hold them over for a week or two beyond October 7th. And those relatively few students, we will be in communication with both as a campus, and I suspect through our system office. And then with respect to our planning in the future, we continue to have robust conversations with the central office about the spring. As many of you have become aware or have seen the email, that the target is 70% quote unquote face-to-face classes. We have taken this to mean 70% traditional face-to-face classes as we all experience them through at least through the fall of 19, before COVID came. And then this other bucket of 30% includes everything else that is not that. So hybrids, low residency, fully online, other modalities. There is a conversation that I need to have with the chancellor, just given where Lehman was at prior to COVID hitting us, and in terms of how we were approaching modalities strategically as a campus, and what our numbers showed. And then, of course, I think we continue to ask for greater degrees of clarity and specificity, not only about guidelines for planning for the spring, but also as we operationalize or re-operationalize pre-existing policies that guided how we defined and tracked modalities of teaching. And we hope to have those things resolved shortly. I get a brief opportunity to chat with the chancellor tomorrow afternoon, and planning for spring semester and talking about our course modalities and what might be unique at Lehman is top of mind for me. So those are the high points, I guess, of my briefing at this point. I recognize we're moving towards the middle of the semester. And so at the same time that we move towards the middle of the semester, we slide back into the routine of quote unquote normal operations in the academic calendar. And in a lot of ways, I suspect that we and our students are there as well. Along with me, I have Reine, Sarmiento, and Jermaine Wright. Before I open it up, I would like to turn it over to Reine to kind of give us an overview of where we are and where we may be trending, looking into the future, crystal balling a little bit where we might be with enrollment.
Thank you, President Delgado. I think I'll start off by just giving some broad information about how we did this fall. But before I do that, I really want to underscore, because you weren't here during that time, the tremendous effort during the summer that we all did to do our best in these unusual circumstances. CUNY gave us guidelines in the summer. It kind of threw off some of our plans. I think we reacted really well as an institution, and we were really focused, despite the policies, to really focus on what's important, which was meeting our students where we were. So we were, Jermaine and I were constantly talking to the general public about vaccination rates and enrollment and so forth. So I'm proud of the work that that the team and Lehman has done in getting us to where we're at. So at the beginning of the year, our target was 15,255. And somewhere when things started to change, we amended that target down by 5% to 14,492. So right now, as it stands, our enrollment right now is 15,527, which meant we are 99% of target. Um, uh, and that in terms of undergrad, we had 13,000 students. We're at 96% of target and 89% of grad. So I could say from the continuing side that the deficit in enrollment was in our continuing students. We fell short a little bit, and we made up for it in our new student targets. So our continuing student target was 9,006, and we ended up at 9,004. And our new student target was 4,500, and we ended up at over 5,000, which is 11%. And that's due in part by the tremendous job of GPS and having the deans worked on the blocks, and the whole GPS team and SEEK making their target. And ACE in the middle of the summer got an extra 100 funding for an additional 100 students, which is always really great to hear. So with that, the total enrollment for new students was 1,583, which far exceeded our target. Now, where we did fall a little short was our transfers, but we're also trending with the rest of the institution, followed in context by a double-digit reduction in all but one community college. So, and those are mostly our feeder institutions. And so we're really redoubling our efforts with our BTAG and looking at our transfer numbers and how to be able to address that. So in total head count, 14,475. And in terms of FTE, which is the full-time equivalent, we were at 94% of target, which meant that students enrolled were taking less classes than we predicted. And I guess with the way it is and the circumstances that we have, that was to be predicted. In terms of enrollment overall through the university, we're kind of in the middle there. The usual suspects were on top, and the usual suspects were on the bottom. And so the circumstances, enrollment circumstances, was really felt CUNY-wide. So that kind of gives an idea of the fall. Now the spring, I think it's really too soon to forecast. We really need clarification on whether students need to upload their vax before they register. And the guidelines, you talked about the 70 to 30. What does that mean for Lehman? And how does that fit? So we, like the rest of the university, are looking for guidance. And then from that point, we could work with the deans, as well as enrollment management and student affairs, to be able to put targets together.
Thank you, Renee. And I'll say, having come from a different place, the trends on community college is unfortunately a nationwide trend. And at least through COVID, the numbers on the lagging numbers on returning students also tended to be a national trend. So we're going to have to figure out how to turn that around, but also capitalize on the positive. And the positive opportunity here might be those first-year students, who, of course, will be with us for multiple years. So I think we have a way forward, but like everything else with COVID, it is fraught, and there are risks. There will inevitably be risks.
Fernando, I also think that in terms of what you're saying with the freshmen, although it was the largest class, there's a good set of subset of students who will need help because of the learning loss that's happened over the past
Yep.
year, and we're seeing that.
Yep.
So our learning recovery program with Elin Waring and Althea Ford has helped. Over 250 students have taken advantage of the summer program, but we need to do more, and we need to be able to make sure we could service those students. So it's a responsibility that we have, and I think that we're poised to be able to understand the challenges and be able to respond.
Those are great points, Reine. And I'm going to loop back to those points because in tangential ways, they've come up with the conversations we've had with legislators as well. But I do want to loop back to an earlier point you made, which was what happened before I arrived here. So everything that happened before July 1. And I was in a process of getting briefed by various members of cabinet and Interim President Lemons there, but obviously the context is everything and the frustrations are everything. And I will acknowledge my ignorance of those times and also note that the dexterity, the resilience, the flexibility of our faculty and staff in ambiguous times with multiple, sometimes competing or conflicting leadership messages, that's tough to work in. And I've appreciated how everybody has pushed and tried to get clarity, but even at the same time have maintained their focus on our students and the student learning experience. Those are elements of the Lehman community that were always attractive to me, and I've been amazed at just how engaged and how in some ways matter of fact people have been. And I'm not saying there's no drama. There's always drama because you get frustrated, but in comparison to places that I came from and places that I knew, the level of resiliency here and just wanting to focus on doing the right thing in the best ways is just amazing. We went through our own little flip 3 times in the first 2 weeks before school started last fall at my previous institution. And by the second flip, which was mandated by our system office, our department heads were ready to scalp the provost. That was me, and our vice chancellor for student affairs. And quite candidly, we understood why they were upset because that second flip told faculty they had to readjust 2 weeks of their instruction 5 days before the semester started. And we learned some very powerful lessons about, even if the message is unpopular, if you give people enough time to adjust and the support to adjust, they will adjust. But if you blindside them, it is incredibly difficult to bounce back. And I know there have been moments where the faculty and staff here have felt blindsided. We're trying to move past that. I appreciate how frustrating that is. And some of what we're doing is trying to get as much clarity before we send a message out so that we can have a consistent and accurate message, as opposed to simply sending a message and then having to pivot back and alter it or do a 180 on it, because that just invites a tremendous amount of confusion, in particular with our students. And so we hope to get clarity within the next day or two of some of the key pieces about processes, policies, and guidelines for spring semester from the central office, so that we can begin sharing things with confidence that they'll stick, that is in fact the game plan with our deans and department heads and faculty and staff here very shortly. And I appreciate any patience that you give with us, that you can lend to us, because we understand how frustrating it can be, because we're frustrated at working in the ambiguity, because of course we cannot then pass on clear guidelines and clear information to people. And I apologize for that. I mean, we should always strive to do better as university and collegiate leaders. Jermaine, can I turn to you and ask how things are going? Because this is always a question that comes up with the processing of exemptions and exceptions as well.
Great. So thank you, President Delgado. I could give an overall picture and then get into some of the nuances as it pertains to medical exemptions as well as religious exceptions. So I first want to thank our local vaccination authorities. So every campus within the CUNY system had to assign what's categorized as LVAs. So within the Student Affairs division, I've assigned 4 LVAs, and they have done a remarkable job. So it's Cindy Kreisberg, we have Yolanda Rodriguez, we have Duhedi Ortiz, and we have Ashmini Paharel. They have been doing a fabulous job. So the numbers that I will give is a result of their 24-hour, oftentimes seemingly, commitment and weekend commitment to ensuring that our numbers are accurate by the day. So they provide a report to me daily. So as of today, we have 9,412 students who have submitted something to the CUNY First Vaccination Hub portal. Of those students, we have 8,196 of those students who have been approved. So we have a critical mass of our student population, given the numbers you've heard from VP Sarmiento regarding enrollment, who we are above 50% of our entire student population who have already done what they needed to do and uploaded their information. And I want to thank the students. As indicated, it was August the 23rd, 2 days before classes began, where the Pfizer vaccination was approved. And we began to see students doing their due diligence and ensuring that they were uploading. Sometimes it was 600 plus uploads a day that our LVAs had to comb through and look at and see who had the necessary documentation, while also attending CUNY-wide LVA meetings to keep me up to date on what the new trends are, because they are our frontline people who I depend on for the information, so that I can inform my colleagues on cabinet and inform you as well, President Delgado. So I thank them for doing the work that they do, but we can do it in isolation. So the numbers that I give you and the more nuanced pieces of it is with the help of Enrollment Manage, Chris Bonaparte. We have Richard Finger, who's also been Juan Luna, who's been masterful of just really getting the information out to students, because they've been helpful from a communication standpoint. Nicole Saunders as well from our PR team, and Colleen Lutoff as well, have been really helpful in crafting messaging, getting it out to targeted populations to ensure that the messaging is succinct to their particular needs. So as I indicated, 8,196 students have been approved. We have 513 who are not approved, and we have 484 that are in review phase, and then we have 4 that are in the not submitted phase. We don't have any students who are in the queue. So we've cleared every single student and have categorized them accordingly. So no students are in the queue waiting to hear from us who are in that vaccinated pool. As it pertains to our medical exemptions, we've received 37 total of those, 9 of which have been approved, and then 26 of them have not been approved. And it's really very specific. There's a specific criteria as to what can be considered a medical exemption. Which is, it has to be given by a doctor, and it has to say specifically why the particular condition absolves one from getting the COVID vaccination. It cannot just be that I have this condition. The condition has to be the condition or the side effect of the COVID vaccination on the condition has to be clearly laid out. But we've had less of those. What we've had more of is our religious exemption pieces, where we've had 178 of those, and of those 80 have been approved, and 69 have not been approved. So for those students who have not been approved, we have been looking through it, and primarily there are students who did not provide a statement, which is a criteria that CUNY Central has indicated via the CUNY First portal, that a statement is needed. And for every single student who was not approved in any of these categories, they were provided an explanation, a comment in CUNY First, as well as an email saying, please go check your comments in CUNY First, and you have an opportunity to re-upload information as well, because again, it was a thing of not submitting one piece or the other. So again, I want to acknowledge the work that our LVAs have been doing, because while it's almost 9,500 students, it's more than that, because they're going in there multiple times, because they have to review things that have made comments to, and then students have additional things that they had to upload. So please, 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 our students, if you are in any of these categories, the review, the not submitted category, please, please, please check your emails, check your text messages. We have been rapid fire because we want to be able to provide you with the technical assistance needed to upload your information if you are still wanting to do so. within our not approved categories. And for those who we've reviewed, as you've indicated, President Delgado, we're waiting prerequisite timeframes of 14 days or so for full vaccination to ensure that those students are fully vaccinated. So those are up-to-date numbers as of this morning at, this afternoon at 1:34 p.m. As I said, they're on it. They send me this information daily. So I want to thank the team as well. And it is truly a team effort. And I also, Bridget as well, we also have our general counsel who's always looking to ensure that we're doing what's correct, but then also all of these individuals are very, very much student-centered. Not only student affairs, because we bear the title student affairs, I will say that all of my colleagues are very much student-centered, and everything is, how will this impact the student? How can we not make this as harsh on our students? How can we continue to communicate with our students to ensure that they're getting the messaging? So I do want to thank everyone who's been really helpful in ensuring that we've gotten this far, and there is still more work to be done.
Thank you, Jermaine. A relatively small number of people doing a lot of work. It's kind of been the hallmark of COVID at Lehman. I want to get back to some of Renee's comments regarding our opportunities and challenges moving forward. So one of the things I continue to do is meet with legislators and state and local and federal legislators. They are obviously very supportive of Lehman, very inquisitive about the things that we're doing and how we're navigating these times, and very expansive at times about what they hope that we can do. And we want to be good partners, but at the same time, we do remind them that we can't be everything to everybody. We can be many things to many people, but we can't be everything to everybody. But one place where there seems to be some concurrence with where we're at and where we're going, and what some legislative concerns are, is this question of our partnership with high schools, and how we get more and more of these young people directly into our colleges, and what can we do from their perspective to support Lehman. And so as you heard Renee say, as we continue to onboard these young people who themselves have gone through an educational experience in high school, there are always adjustments to college, but there are perhaps gaps in terms of their social and intellectual development that are magnified because of COVID, and because of how they've had to navigate the last couple of years of their high school education. And I do think that there's a real and meaningful opportunity to sit down either with the local legislators or the state delegation and identify program dollars to support this. We had discussed with them earlier in the summer the idea of bringing a small menu of maybe 4 to 6 options of things that we're really considering that would be impactful to supporting our mission and our purpose. And they have been receptive to that. But one area that they have communicated is, they really want to see higher success rates for kids who are coming out of the K through 12 system and into the 2 and 4 year collegiate system. And relatedly, the other piece that has come up most recently, I would say over the last 3 to 5 weeks in these conversations, has been concern about us leaving any demographic behind and in the Bronx. And as that has crystallized in some of the conversations with legislators, a number of them have said they're particularly concerned with a male achievement gap, a young male achievement gap, and have given us some signals that they may be very interested in funding programming that could help with those students accessing Lehman, but also transitioning and being successful in Lehman. And we do have a number of initiatives underway. I know, for example, Dr. Wright has a Black Male Initiative, and I think those kinds of things do capture the attention of our legislators, and it gets them thinking. But clearly, they would like us to see ways of bolstering our enrollment by making sure that all of the demographic sectors, culturally, ethnically, and in terms of gender, are represented. I'm not saying that those are the only demographic markers that matter. I'm simply saying that those are the demographic categories and characteristics that they have raised in the conversation. And I think some of those concerns certainly dovetail with Dr. Sarmiento's comments about what our challenges and opportunities could be in terms of becoming more dependent, in the short term at least, on high school graduates as our first year students. So we will continue to have the conversations with legislators. We will bring that information back to our leadership groups, and if we can find a concurrence here, I think we have an opportunity to take to Albany, for example, a fairly robust pair of options for programmatic funding. And I do think there are some wonderful opportunities to partner with the borough leadership as well as the city council. Although I will say we've had deeper conversations with the city council about our ongoing food insecurity issues, and they've been keen to want to support that. There is a third piece that is still, I mean, anybody who's following the federal government understands why it's still kind of up in the air. And some of that has to do with these infrastructure bills that are being debated. In those infrastructure bills, we have been told by some of our federal delegation that there will be earmarks for Hispanic serving institutions and minority serving institutions. We're not entirely sure if they're just sort of broad buckets of money that are going to be dumped into the Department of Education and people bid for it, or they get allocated, or if they will come to the Department of Education, because that appears where they're going, for specific kinds of initiatives. And I'm grateful to the deans for the conversations that they have had with Susan Ebersol and myself and Peter Wosu over the last month, because in some of their priorities and their initiatives, there are clearly ideas that could conceivably fit into one or more of those buckets. And issues like achievement and completion in some shape or form, I would have to expect would be part of those HSI and MSI allocations. We have gotten clear signals from Senator Schumer's and Gillibrand's offices that as we bid for federal grants, that we should engage them, and they would be willing to write letters of support. And they, along with Representative Bowman, have been very good about telling us that as these things with the MSI and HSI funding come to fruition, they will give us a heads up of where it's tending to go, so that we might have an opportunity to hit the ground running and be as competitive as we can be to get funding. I'm going to conjecture as a for example. So for example, Dean Mills has a notion of a transitional program that ultimately would produce more MDs. We do know that there is a deficit in urban and rural areas of primary care and preventative care physicians. We do know that there is a desire to develop more bicultural, bilingual, and diverse medical staff, particularly amongst doctors. And we are uniquely positioned, I think, in some ways, to help that through an initiative in that particular school. And so if, for example, there was an earmark within the MSI bucket for developing pathways to professions, then that transition to MD program would be perfect fodder to go aggressively pursue. I'm not saying that's how it's going to lay out, but those are the kinds of conversations and those are the kinds of opportunities that could potentially line up well for us in the next month or so. We obviously we hope the federal government doesn't shut down, and obviously we hope the federal government can figure out its way through these infrastructure bills, because once that happens, there could be a number of very positive dominoes that Lehman College can take advantage of, and frankly, the entire system. But candidly, I'm thinking more parochially of Lehman than the entire system. I do have a question comment here in terms of cultural events and workshops moving forward from Felicia Escort. Felicia, that's a difficult one for me to answer. However, because you've asked the question, I will follow up with that question with others on campus to see what and how that looks like. And in particular, what are we planning for Black History Month as we move forward? And then Leslie Lehman, that is actually a great comment, and it's a great reminder for everybody. Whatever our system policies are about vaccination, therefore accessing our campus and our facilities. But if our students are in education programs, nursing programs, other allied health programs, conceivably social work programs, where there are clinical placements or practica, whatever our policies are, they are trumped by those local policies. So if our students need to complete their program by being in one of those placements, they will have to defer to the policies of the agencies or the locations in which those placements occur. And just so everybody knows, Leslie wrote that there's a reminder that any student teacher placed in a Department of Education PK through 12 school needs to complete his or her certification track must be vaccinated. The NYC DOE is not allowing any exemption for student teachers. And so the CUNY exemption policy is overwritten by the DOE mandate. And that is absolutely true. We've seen that with our nurses as well. I don't see any other questions. I don't have any other updates. Renee, do you have anything for the good of the order?
Good.
Jermaine?
I'm good as well, President Delgado.
Okay. Thank you, Desiree. That's very kind. We do try to give at least good information, or at least the best information we have at the time, subject to modification. We're at 2:37. We could continue on, but if we have addressed the questions that are extant today, I'm happy to let you go back to your lives. And if these extra 23 minutes allow you that modicum extra of work-life balance, then please treasure these next 23 odd minutes, because I know that I and Renee and Jermaine will, because it's been a complicated last 6 or 7 weeks, hasn't it? And I see no other open questions, so I'll thank everybody for attending. And please be on the lookout for emails, because obviously as things get clarified, you will see either emails from my office or one of the cabinet members' office, or perhaps just as likely from the central office, from CUNY Central. So thank you, everybody. Be well. Have a good afternoon and evening. And I hope your week ends well.